All right, so we're going to talk about the converting decimals to fractions. This is Sparky, page 9, practice E. And so question number 4 is converting 0.25 or 25 hundredths into a fraction. And so this is on our benchmark fraction, so you may recognize it from there and know the answer right away. Or you might not, and then we would have to figure out what that is. And so in working that, we know from our notes we have our FDP triangle. To go from a fraction to a decimal, we divide. To go from a decimal to a percent, we multiply by 100. To go from a percent to a fraction, we put that percentage number over 100. So right now we're at a decimal and we need to get to a fraction. So we have two steps to do. And so 0 and 25 hundredths. To get it from a decimal to a percent, I need to multiply by 100. So if I have 0.25 multiplied by 100, as you know, we're going to move the decimal twice to the right, and that's going to become 25%. Take that percentage, in order to get it from a percent to a fraction, take that number, put it over 100. So now I have 25 over 100, and from there I can simplify. And I would look for my greatest common factor. My factors of 25 are 1 and 25, 5 and 4, and I know I can divide 25 both into 100 and to 25. If not, if you didn't recognize that and divide it by 5, you'll still get there eventually. But 25 divided by 25 is 1. 100 divided by 25 is 4. So then my fraction is going to be 1/4. Question number 6 says 0 and 625 thousandths. Another thing that you could do that some students have recognized, if you just say it out loud, then you're already putting it in fraction form. That's going to save us a step, and that is true. So 0 and 625 thousandths, or I could just say 625 thousandths. And so I'm already in fraction form, but I know that this can be simplified. And so again, if I don't know what all of my factors of 625 are, that's okay. I can recognize right off the bat, because it ends in a 5, I can divide by 5. And so if I divide top and bottom by 5, 625 divided by 5 is going to be 1. And 12 would give me 2. And then 25 will get me 5. So then that's going to be 125 over, and then 1,000 divided by 5 is going to be 200, and I could still reduce that more, and so I can divide again by 25 if we recognize it. If not, you could do it by 5 again, but I noticed that it can be by 25 on the top and bottom. So 125 divided by 25 is 5, and then 200 divided by 25 is going to be 8, and so my answer will be 5/8. All right, so the next one, question number 8. So let me change my page a little bit so I have some clean writing space. So 2 and 25 hundredths. And I recognize that I can simplify that. So that's going to be, so I know 2 is going to stay the same, but my 25 hundredths I'm going to try and reduce. And so if I divide the top and bottom by 25, 25 divided by 25 is 1, 100 divided by 25 is 4, and then my answer is going to be 2 and 1/4. Or if we recognize that benchmark decimal as 0.25 being equal to 1/4, then we know that that's 2 and 1/4. So again, that's another reason why those benchmarks are so important. All right, so the next one that I'm going to do here is number 13. And so I have 1.2, and I would say that out loud as 1 and 2/10. And so again, 1 and 2/10, I have my 1. And then 2/10, I can divide the top and bottom by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So that's going to get me 1 and 1/5. And that's all for that side that I'm going to work. Hopefully that helps. And looking at the other side, I'll do a couple of these as well. This is Sparky Practice B, which is page 6, converting fractions to decimals. And so converting fractions to decimals on my FDP triangle, going from a fraction to a decimal, it's really simple. All I have to do is divide. And so looking at number 2, 3 divided by 5. So my ice cream is going to go in the freezer. So 3 goes inside, cone on the outside. And so now I need to divide. But before I do that, I have to remember that Sparky said to locate the decimal place inside and then put it up on the roof and ignore it. So I know my decimal is here. Put it on the roof, ignore it, and I can just divide like normal. So 5 goes into 3 0 times. 5 goes into 30 6 times. 6 times 5 is 30. And I am done. And so my answer will be 0.6 or 6/10. And then let's do question number 10 first. So 7/4, which is the same as 7 divided by 4. Remember, I can recognize that as 7 divided by 4, or putting my ice cream in the freezer, cones on the counter, find my decimal point, put it up on the roof, ignore it. 4 goes into 7 one time. 1 times 4 is 4. 7 minus 4 is 3. Create a 0, bring it down. 4 goes into 30. 7 times 4 is 28. That's going to give me 2. Bring down another 0. And then 4 goes into 20 5 times. 5 times 4 is 20. And then I am done. So that gets me 1.75 or 1 75/100. And then from our benchmarks, if we recognize that 0.75 is the same as 3/4, then we could write that as 1 3/4 as well. But for this exercise, we're trying to get a decimal, so we have what we need at 1 75/100. And for the last question that I'm going to work for you guys is 7/9 as a decimal. So I'm going to divide 7 divided by 9. So my ice cream in the freezer, cones on the counter, find my decimal, put it on the roof, ignore it. 9 goes into 7 0 times. 9 goes into 70. 7 times 9 is 63. All right, good. So 70 minus 63 is 7. Is that going to be one of my 7 repeating? Oh, we do have a 7 repeating here. So we recognize 9 times 7 is 63 again. 7. And so I'm just going to keep repeating. So 7 repeating is my answer. And that does match one in my test bank. And I'm good to go. So that is converting fractions to decimals.